Up, guys? It's been quite a while since I've made a fighter guide, and I know now is probably one of the best times to make one. For one reason being, a lot of people think fighter's completely out of the meta and unplayable. And, we just had the Steam release, Epic release. There's a ton of new players coming in, a ton of players looking to learn fighter, try to get into the class, figure out how to play it at the beginning level, mid-level and the high level. And I think, obviously, I'm pretty good at the class, so I will try to explain a bit of my knowledge to help pretty much anybody that's watching this. If you're, a new fighter player, experienced fighter player, then hopefully there will be something you could pick up off of here. I think that on the higher end, there are a lot of different builds that you can run, and I think, even if you're somebody that's been playing fighter for a very long time, I think some of the builds I'm going to show off today that I have been running recently are going to be interesting to you and potentially something you might want to run yourself. So to start off with, this is going to be, it's like I said, I want to explain this all for new players too. So fighter as a class. Generally, when you think of fighter, and even in the game, the way it says it, like right here, like if you do a class change, and you got to create a character fighter, like it says over here, the jack of all trades to come to combat, well versed in multitude of weapons and armaments. Fighter can hold his own against anyone, and then you can equip mostly everything, well-rounded attributes, sprints, depending on equipment. I'm just gonna be honest with you, most of that's irrelevant because generally that's the case for what a fighter is, but not really in this game, right? Most of the time, what a fighter is going to be is you're going to be wearing plate armor, you're going to be, running sword and shield, crossbow, or a bow, and that's your build. Yeah, there are a couple things where you can do it like Slayer, but for the most part, that's not what fighter is. So I just want to give you a good idea of like whenever you play this class, if you want to have success, just expect to be playing around the plate armor, sword and shield style build. Fighter is a very defensive character, especially now. In the past, it's had plenty of offensive capabilities, but recently with the sprint nerf, Fighter has had most of its offensive capabilities nerfed quite hard. There are still some, and I'm going to talk about those in a bit. However, for the most part, like I said, Fighter will be a pure defensive character. So just think of it as like the de facto tank of the squad, right? Because there are other characters that can also, take a lot of damage, but they're more bruiser style like Barbarian or Bard, where they also have very good damage output potential. So to start off with, we're just going to go into perks and skills. There's a ton of different things you can run here. I do, however, think, like I said, if you're going to run plate, there are two perks you always run. It is Defense Mastery, and it is going to be Swift. These two right here are just the best, utility perks, I guess you could call them, for running plate. One of them gives you more armor rating, and the other gives you, it removes move speed penalty of the armor you're wearing, so it makes you faster. And in a meta where move speed is the most important, which, I mean, to be fair, it always has been, but now that we've had move speed taken away, you want to get move speed wherever you physically can. After this, you have several different options. I'm going to try to talk about all of them here. To start with, I'm just going to go over the ones you're pretty much never going to pick. Just, get these out of the way. Slayer, can't wear plate armor with that, but I will talk about Slayer on its own. Projectile resist, this isn't bad. However, most of the time, this is the only things this is going to affect are one, arrows, which you already do incredibly strong against, obviously because you're full plate, which means you have very high PDR. So arrows don't really hurt you much anyways. Then the ones it actually matters for, you have Ice Bolt, Dark Bolt, Fireball, and Magic Missile. There's probably a few others that I'm missing, crossbows, stuff like that. But for the most part, those are the major ones. Fireball, I don't believe the projectile damage reduction affects it unless you get direct hit by the fireball. For example, if you get by the splash, or if you block the direct hit and the splash damaged you, then this should not apply because that doesn't count as projectile damage; it counts as splash damage. And in which case, if you do get hit by the direct fireball, this 10% projectile damage reduction is not really good. You're not going to notice it because you're probably going to lose 70% of your health bar to it, right? Dual wield. There have been some builds with this. However, in the current meta, it's just not very good. You can run this with Slayer, yes, but with plate, it's just not realistic. You'd have to give up your shield to run this, so you don't want to do that. Adrenaline spike. This isn't horrible. Like it's definitely not bad. But the problem is the 40% threshold for it to pop is pretty low, and most of the time, if you're going to drop below this, either one, you're going to win the fight regardless, two, you're going to be blocking so you can get healed back up, like either with your second win, by a cleric, by a druid, whatever, or three, you're just going to win the fight anyways, or you're going to lose the fight. I'm not sure if I already said win the fight. It's either, like, if you drop below this threshold, you're probably already winning or losing the fight, and this isn't going to change it, or you're going to be blocking, trying to get healed back up, so the action speed you have won't be valuable. Right? I mean, yeah, it lasts 12 seconds, so you have time, but I don't like running perks that are, I'm not getting, like, maximum value of. This is the same thing I'm going to talk about with Adrenaline Rush in a minute. And then combo attack. I'm sure a lot of people hear this and they're like, wow, combo attack sounds great. I want to run it. That's exactly how I was when I first started, and how a lot of people are, because it sounds really good. When you successfully melee attack consecutively within 2 seconds, gain 10% physical damage bonus temporarily. So, I don't know why this text still isn't updated, but how this works is you have to hit somebody, then hit somebody again, and then on the third hit, you will have 10% physical damage bonus from there on as long as you're hitting within 2 seconds. How it's worded is if you hit someone once and then you hit someone twice, that second hit will have the damage buff. It won't. And 10% physical damage bonus, it's not very much. If you're wondering, it's literally this number right here. Like physical power bonus, it adds 10% to this. That's how it works. And like, yeah, it's not bad. And on bigger weapons, it's going to give you the most practicality. Like if you're running like Halberd or something, this is the only time you're ever going to run this, just because Halberd has no other good perks. Or like, I guess Spear has like shield mastery and stuff. But like Halberd's really the only weapon that's ever going to run this. You don't really want it on Arming Sword. You don't really want it on Falchion, because it's just... On Falchion, for the most part, you don't need it. Usually the third hit, they're dead, or you're not going to proc it. On Arming Sword, yes, you're going to proc it, but Arming Sword's base damage is pretty low, so the 10% isn't actually going to give you that much value. It's only going to give you about 4 or 5 damage, maybe. I mean, you know, after, like, you know, mitigations and everything. It's really not going to give you a ton. And then you have Sword Mastery, which is pretty much just the better thing. It always gives you weapon damage and action speed, like, just permanently. Like, it's just pretty much combo attack, but better. It's combo attack with slightly less damage, more action speed, and no stipulations. So until this is fixed, or changed, it's just not very valuable. So moving on to the perks that are actually worth mentioning. Whenever I'm running plate, one of the perks I've been taking always is Barricade. While in defensive stance, gain 50 armor rating and 50 magic resistance. So defensive stance, it means blocking or parrying with the longsword. So, you know, if you're holding up the longsword's RMB and you're like holding the parry, that counts as a defensive stance. You will have the armor rating and magic resistance during that animation. If you hit a parry with the longsword and you do the attacks, just for anyone that doesn't know, really quick, if somebody parries your longsword, the way to riposte is to tap the block button immediately again while you're still in the stagger animation. And, you know, once again, just going a little bit further, the window you have to parry is based on the impact resistance and the impact damage of their weapon. So the lighter the weapon is that hits your parry, the shorter the window you have to riposte. So like daggers and rapiers are damn near impossible unless you're like really good at the window. But yeah, moving on. This is really, really good for the armor rating and the magic res, because like I said, I'm going to go over in a minute. The builds I've been running they've usually had pretty high magic resistance, and I've been running things like Taunt, which I will also go over very shortly, because this is probably my favorite perk so far. But you're getting the value out of the armor, and you're getting value out of the magic res. So the really big reason I run this is, especially, you know, I'm going to say this is... Most of my experience is in trios. I can speak a bit about duos and solos because I have played it, but most of what I'm saying and most of what I will be talking about will be going towards a trios mindset, right? So in trios, a lot of times, either you're fighting caster comps like Warlock or Wizard, or even Cleric with Holy Strike, where there's damage you won't be able to avoid, or you're fighting things like double melee comps, where if they both get on you and you're blocking, it's not realistic to expect to block all of their attacks, right? So whenever that happens, if you need heals or you need to buy time, you block, you're getting extra 50 armor, or if you're fighting wizards or, you know, warlocks or whatever, you block, you're getting 50 magic res, and if they hit you through your shield, or, you know, around your shield with splash or whatever, which they usually will, then you're taking less damage from that. And moving on, the last perk is very, I think there's 3 good choices for it. You have Sword Mastery, which I will run if I'm running Arming Sword alone. If I'm running Falchion, I don't run this, just because on Falchion I don't feel like I need the extra damage, and the action speed doesn't feel that relevant. I think you need a lot of action speed to make Falchion like really feel like a noticeable difference. That's just my personal preference. Also, the second part of it, the gain 10 additional move speed when taking a defensive stance with your sword, that is specifically for the long sword. That is not for the sword and shield. Keep that in mind. Then you have counterattack. When you successfully block an attack, gain 10% move speed bonus and 10% action speed for 3 seconds. This is really good for chasing people down, specifically like rangers or bards or fighters or anybody that has like a projectile that's like, you know, arrows, bolts, Franciscas, throwing knives, any of those. So you're chasing them, you know, they're running from you, they turn, they look at you, they shoot an arrow, you block it, or they throw something or a bolt or whatever, you block it, you drop your shield, and now you have 10% move speed bonus for 3 seconds. If you don't know, that's like 30 move speed, right? So that's like a bunch of agi rolls and boots. It's a pretty big difference. And for those that don't know, something else that's pretty important. So a lot of percentages when you say like this, like 10% move speed bonus, 10% action speed, this isn't 10% of your current value. This is a flat additive percent. So obviously I know I'm at 100% right now, so it's not very good. But let's say like let's like just say I was at whatever what am I at now. So let's say I'm at 96.2 right here. So this 10% would not give me 9.62% of my move speed. This would just add 10% to this number, right? So I would go from 96.2 to 106.2% whenever counterattack procs. Put this back up. All right. Okay. And the action speed also just kind of nice when you're boxing. You get a block in, you have 10% action speed, 10% move speed for 3 seconds while you're fighting someone. Again, three seconds is a long window to be able to get another block in, so you have time to just kind of swing at them for the duration. And then Shield Mastery. Shield Mastery is a very interesting perk, and if you don't, this kind of has like a hidden effect on it. That I say hidden effect, it's probably just bad text still, because as I'm sure you guys will realize, a lot of the text in this game is just incorrect. A lot of it comes from they're translating from Korean to English, because a lot of them don't really speak that great of English as far as I'm aware. They don't have a guy officially translating their perks. But while you're in defensive stance, you gain 10% move speed bonus. Once again, it's worked for longsword parry and blocking, and it's a flat 10%. However, the most important part is the next part. When you successfully block an attack, gain 50% action speed towards your next block. So that doesn't sound bad, right? It's like, okay, if I block an attack, then I can get my block up faster. And that would be cool, but that's not actually what this does. When you block an attack, you get 50% action speed towards your next attack. That comes out immediately. That's why I'm pretty sure this is bugged, because it has to be like you have to block and immediately swing. And for those that don't know, action speed is literally just attack speed. Really, it's any animation you do while attacking. So like your fist and casting spells from a spell book, your like staff animation, sword swinging, all of that. That is action speed. So if you block an attack and you swing right away, your next attack will have 50% attack speed. If you've ever like had this on, you're like, man, I randomly sometimes I attack really fast. It's really weird. That's what this is, and this is a very, very good perk. And I don't think this is bad personally. I like it. I'm very fond of it. I've ran it plenty of times. However, I've been leaning towards counterattack over it, just because this gives me extra chase down potential that I normally wouldn't have on a lot of characters. Because with sprint being nerfed, it's really, really hard for fighters to catch up to people, and that is something you really want to do. Because even if like a ranger can't kill you, if you can't catch them, you can't kill them either. But like I said, with some builds from using Arming Sword, I have been running Sword Mastery, but generally I will be running Counterattack. So now moving on to skills, a lot of these skills suck. I'm going to be honest with you, most of these skills suck. The one that I would recommend always taking right now in the current meta is Second Wind, just because Second Wind pretty much has no downside. It just, 40% of your max HP over 12 seconds, which is obviously pretty good. Most of the fighter skills aren't very good, but Second Wind is one of the only ones now that really is just always solid. Like, yes, you could make the argument of, oh, but if you fight a wizard and they have Fire Mastery, it anti-heals you. Yeah, that's the case, but even then you're still getting some value, right? Like, you'll be still getting 20% of your maximum health every 12 seconds, which isn't a lot. Yeah, to be fair, it's not a lot, but hey, it's more than nothing. Now, going over some of the others, once again, I'm going to talk about the bad ones. Breakthrough, they just buffed this a lot. It's 10 seconds now, and you ignore all debuffs that slow move speed and all of those, but the thing is, like, yeah, that sounds really good until you realize there's not actually a lot of them that do that in the game. You have, like, Druid Root or, Slow or Earthquake, but the amount of times you actually get hit by that, it's not a ton. And then you have, like, the leg shot from Rangers, like the crippling shot, but I ran Breakthrough for 5 or 6 games, and I didn't have a single instance where I felt like I ever felt the need to use it. Almost every single time, I'm like, yeah, this is just completely useless. Like, I have no value from it. Even though Sprint is much, much worse now, only giving 20 additional move speed, I still think it's probably better than Breakthrough. Like, yeah, Breakthrough is going to run into those situations maybe like once in 10 or once in 20 games where it's like the best possible thing to run right there. But I don't see a reason to give up one of my 2 skill slots for something that might help me every 10 to 20 games, right? Like, I don't really see that. I'd rather run something that's going to give me value all the time. Moving on, Perfect Block. This is just horrible. I really don't have any other way to describe this. This is just awful. Like, getting the impact resistance only helps against certain weapons. If you're running a heater shield, it literally only helps you against, like, Warmaul or Bardiche or Halberd maybe. But it's like, that's, that doesn't really matter, right? Like, because if you're fighting those, it's just like I can't really just go in so in depth on how bad this is, but it's just pretty much useless, right? That's really all you need to know. If you're curious about impact resistance, how it works, you can look up another video on it. I'm sure there's plenty of people that have made videos on this, but just perfect block is useless. That's really all you need to know, right? It's really bad. Shield Slam, you inflict 25, and then you have it's scale 100% scaling with physical damage on the player, and reduce the target's move speed bonus by 20% for 2 seconds. It also pushes them. I don't know why it doesn't say this on here, but you push them back a little bit, which it's not bad. Like if you're deciding trying to mess around and like knock people off the map on ice caves or something, like it's fine, but it's pretty mid. Like the damage is pretty low. It's a really long animation to actually do the swing. If they have a shield, they can block it. If they're fast, they can move away. And the move speed slow is pretty low. 20% for 2 seconds is really not that much. Overall, it's a very underwhelming perk is what I'll say. It's just super average. Now, again, also Victory Strike, your next attack deals additional 20% phys damage bonus. If the target dies from this attack, heal for 15% of your maximum health. The one use this has, if you're like a brand new player and you're really struggling with clearing PvE and healing, run this, and like if you find like a spider pot, you can just sit there and farm your like full health off of it or something, or like get a mob 1 HP and then kill it with Victory Strike to heal. Other than that, pretty much has no use. The only time that you're really going to make value out of the additional damage passive is if you're going longsword and parrying, or if you're running like a windless crossbow build trying to one-tap people. Other than that, pretty useless. Now, finally, moving on to the actual useful perks, I will say. Start off with Adrenaline Rush. Adrenaline Rush, you gain 15% action speed for 8 seconds. After the duration ends, lose 8% action speed and 4% move speed bonus for 2 seconds. So, this perk isn't bad. That's what I'm going to start off with. Or the skill isn't bad. I have ran it. I've ran it specifically with my arming sword build that I'm going to show off. It's good. I mean, 15% action speed for 8 seconds, that's not bad. And then the downside is only for 2 seconds, which is basically irrelevant. And I'm pretty sure that counts as a debuff, so if you have debuff duration, it'll reduce it. So, it's not even fully 2 seconds, like a second half or something, which is easily, like, dealt with by blocking. Or, just not, because like I said, it's such a small debuff. 8% action speed, 4% move speed for 2 seconds, or that's really nothing. But this is really good if you just want to try to like damage check people, like you run at them in a fight. You're like, I can kill you faster than you can kill me. That's what Adrenaline Rush is good for. Other than that, I mean, my big gripe with it is, let's say I pop Adrenaline Rush, but okay, I now need to block. It's the exact same as Adrenaline Spike, where I need to block, so I'm losing value on this thing that I only have active for 8 seconds, right? Like, oh, I'm blocking, so now my 15% action speed doesn't matter because I'm sitting here holding up my shield for, 3 seconds. Now I've lost almost 50% of the value out of one of my skills. Sprint, I mean, that's pretty much all for this. Not really much else to say. Adrenaline Rush is a very straightforward skill. Sprint, there are some builds that can work with this. I think if you're running Slayer, you still run Sprint, just because Slayer needs it so desperately. And yeah, 20 additional move speed is like pretty much nothing. It's almost 7%. It's like 6.6%, which is absolutely horrible. But I mean, it's better than nothing. Like that's how I feel about Sprint right now. Is having Sprint is better than not having it. Like, is it gonna help you catch people? Usually, probably not. But I mean, it gets you closer to them. Like your 20 move speed is more than you would have if you don't run it, right? There's not much else to say about that. It's pretty bad, but still better than most of your other skills. And then on to my favorite skill, Taunt. Taunt, to completely ignore the first part, increase the aggro value to all monsters in 7.5 meter area by 50%. Completely irrelevant. But importantly, gain 10% physical damage reduction and 10% magical damage reduction for 8 seconds. So, this is a very, very good skill, and it's the skill I've been running primarily. So, once again, this is an additive amount. This is not like if you have 50%, then if you have 50% physical damage reduction, it gives you 5% because 10% of 50 is 5. No. If you have 50%, you pop it, you go to 60%. Same for magic. And it's just a great, great skill. So, the best thing about this skill, and it applies to a few other skills like on here, but the great thing about this skill is the cooldown is pretty low. It only has like an 18 or 19 second cooldown. However, the moment you pop Taunt and you start getting the value of it, the cooldown starts. So if Taunt is an 18-second cooldown and it lasts for 8 seconds, it is effectively only a 10-second downtime because you popped it and then the 8-second cooldown started ticking while it's, or the 18-second cooldown started ticking while you have it active for 8 seconds. So really, it's only on cooldown for about 10 seconds. And if you stack a lot of buff duration, which is a build I actually kind of have that I've been messing around with, then you get taunt to last longer, and the longer it lasts, effectively the shorter the cooldown it is. And buff duration also helps with second wind, because second wind used to be bugged, and all buff duration did when it increased the duration of second wind, but it didn't actually increase the healing. So if you had, let's say you had 50% buff duration, you could get your second wind up to 18 seconds, but it would still only heal you for 40% of your health. So it would just hurt you. You would get 40% of your health over 18 seconds instead of over 12 seconds. Now it actually proportionally scales the maximum health with the buff duration. So you have 18 seconds, then you're healing for 60% of your maximum health. So pretty good. All right, this, actually, hold on, I will go over Slayer really quick, too, before I forget. So Slayer perks are super straightforward. There's not much, the only thing that's swappable here is Swift for, actually, no, that's not even true. I've been running Weapon Mastery. This is your solos fighter build for the most part. Is Slayer, if you know, it gives you 5 weapon damage, and you can't use plate armor, dual wield. If you have 2 weapons, it gives you 10% action speed. This is specifically weapons, does not work with shields. Sword Mastery, I already went over this, and Weapon Mastery allows you to use any weapon you want, and you don't have, and you lose 10% physical damage bonus on this weapon. This is specifically so you can use a bow, either recurve or survival are probably your best options. Because in solos, using a crossbow, while using a crossbow is fine, and it's good against certain classes with like wizards, but against things like rogues or other rangers, or hell, even like bards or fighters, crossbow just doesn't give you the range damage you want. It's too slow for reliable poke, while they can shoot you multiple times with a survival bow or recurve bow or whatever they're using. So I take this specifically to use survival bow or recurve. And then your skills, you can run a sprint. I think it's still just the best one. I like second wind. Some people run adrenaline rush here, but personally I like second wind for one reason, is even if I use this and I don't need all the healing in the fight, the healing continues after the fight. And in solos, a big problem is getting third partied. It happens all the time. So even if unless you're like at full health, like wasting the heal's always going to be valuable because it's just less meds you have to use to heal up immediately after a fight. However, Adrenaline Rush is going to give you more value. Like, if you have to pop your second wind and you can't get it back before you fight again with a campfire, Adrenaline Rush will be more value because obviously this is a cooldown and not like a recharge skill like at a campfire or something. So really just use whatever you feel like here. Other than that, not a ton to talk about with Slayer. Slayer is a super straightforward build. Slayer is pretty much just Barbarian, if I had to be honest with you. There's really not a ton to talk about with Slayer. It's, like I said, it's super straightforward. Alright, now, moving on to the armor choices. As you see here, I have 6 kits lined up, and a lot of them are using different pieces. There are some similarities, though. Obviously, like you see, Dark Plate is a very common theme. The heavy dark leather legs and then rugged boots are probably the most common ones. And just to show off a couple kits, this right here is the one I've been running recently. I was running this last night. As you can see, my stats pretty good here. High HP, high move speed, good MDR and PDR. Fizz power bonus is low, action speed is low. So this is kind of, this is starting off on like the buff duration build. You see my buff duration here is 17.4%. Pretty high. But the whole point of this kit is literally just, I just want move speed, right? Like, I think right now, you want move speed, you want HP, and you want resistances. That is like, if you are looking for like the most cookie cutter fighter build you possibly can, these are the 3 stats or I guess 4 stats you want to focus. Health, move speed, physical damage reduction, magical damage reduction. And you're like, oh, your magic res is only 25. That looks really low. Yeah, it does look low. However, if you add into the fact, get magic resist on your shield, have a bard buff, have barricade active and taunt, then this 25% MR unironically goes all the way up to 60 to 65% just from those buffs. Obviously, just from all those buffs, but yeah, just from those buffs. But yeah, this kit is pretty straightforward. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be like, oh my god, why are you wearing Visored Barbuda and leather gloves? So these both give Will, which gives buff duration like I mentioned before, which, like I said, increases the value of Taunt and Second Wind. Also, these give Dex, which is perfectly fine. I mean, getting a little bit more action speed is always cool. And then Visored Barbuda, so they just recently buffed Will. Will gives MR, like here, as you can see here, so I'm at 25%. If I take this off, I lose like 6%. Will was just buffed, so it's giving a lot more MR now. So Will is like you're like double dipping for buff duration and MR. And like, yes, you can wear other helmets. You could wear, like Chappelle. You can wear, because I don't actually think I have Barbuda. Yeah, I don't have the normal Barbuda anywhere on these kits, but I have used it. And you could just wear the Barbuda because it just gives magic res out flat and it gives dexterity. And if you want more action speed, yeah, it's a perfectly fine option. Go for it. Feel free. However, other than that, I haven't really been enjoying Visored Barbuda. Also, one really big thing about these two pieces of gear right here, leather gloves and visored barbuda. And I mean, this is kind of gonna spoil, like, spill the beans on it a bit, and it's not gonna be the case after this video, I'm sure. But because no one wears these, literally no one at all, you can get some insane pieces for incredibly cheap. Like, just out of curiosity, let's see if I can like just go find one really quick. Like, let's dream big. Let's go like legendary. See if there's any like legendary ones. Like, let's see. I mean, these are all like decent. Those are all pretty decent. Let's go. None of those are like crazy. But like things like this, right? Like, look at these. Like 2 Vig, 2 max health, magic damage reduction. Like, all 3 of these are on stats. All right, I'm actually gonna buy this one. Like, all 3 of these were on stats, and they're all incredibly cheap. If you wanted to get these stats right here on a normal Barbuda helm, actually, like, once again, like, just let's see if I can even find one. Right. Let's see, Barbuda, rarity, epic, Vig. Oh, help. Yeah, like, look at this. Significantly worse. This is about the same as the one I just bought. This is, I mean, it's what? It's one more Vig. It's one more Vig and a little bit more action speed, and this is literally 5 times the price of the one I just bought. So yeah, like I was saying, you can get some really good ones for really cheap just because no one wears these. Same with leather gloves. Now, I mean, other than that, obviously the rest of these pieces are pretty expensive and they're pretty like standard, nothing super abnormal here. To talk about the rolls on the gear, things you're going to want to look for: agility, Vig, max health. Those are all perfectly good rolls. Armor rating is fine. Strength isn't the greatest unless you're specifically trying to run damage, which I'm not on this kit. Other than that, like, as you can see, almost all of my gear just has, like, I'm literally just going for, like, max health, armor rolls, that type of thing. There's a little bit of damage here and there, but, I mean, that's just because. That's just what happened to be on the gear. Also, this kit specifically has Lightfoots because without them, my kit was really slow, and getting 1 move speed Lightfoot boots is effectively getting double move speed of anything else except lace turn shoes. But, like, it's like the same as getting, like, double move speed heavies or double move speed ruggeds or anything. Like, yes, you're losing out on the strength and the HP that you would normally get, but if you're fine with that, like I clearly am here because I have like 170 HP, then getting these for just the move speed is fantastic. All right. Moving on to the next kit. Don't worry, I'm not going to go over every single kit I have on Showcase here. I'm just going to go over the ones that I think are worth mentioning. Put this all up. All right, and I think this is like one of my faster kits. Yeah, like as you can see here, this right here is like a Chappelle kit that's faster than like a normal one. Your HP is a bit lower, but your move speed is incredibly high. PDR, MDR are still both good. Fizz power Fizz power is low. Like as you can see, everything's pretty solid here. These are just like the type of kits you want to look for. Like obviously, I don't expect if you're a new player to have these stats. Like that's just not realistic, right? Because I mean, this gear's expensive. Like any of these kits are going to cost you multiple thousands of gold. But this is, I'm trying to show you what like just some like I'd say more in-game kits looks like. You see, everything's pretty good here. Will is, like I said, Will is actually a good roll now. So like a lot of people are like ugh, Will, like that sucks. Will is actually a very good roll to get now. I've been very, very, very fond of it quite recently. And then let me show one more kit, I think. And that should be the last I need to show. Alright, so this kit right here. This is the one that's really different from most of them. As you can see, my move speed is pretty low in this one. I mean, I say pretty low, it's 288. But, so the really big part about this kit is that you have 34 strength. This is the kit I've been running with Arming Sword. You see, this kit has 19% Fizz power. I'm running some really good stuff here with a ton of damage. I need to change this cloak out for a damage one. But I'm pretty much running strength. I'm running strength gear in 3 different pieces. I'm running a strength ring. I have add damage almost everywhere I can. Like I said, I'm going to change this out later to get add damage here. This kit is literally designed just for Arming Sword to do damage. Because with the recent nerfs to like added true damage, Arming Sword is hitting for very little damage. And it was just really, really bad overall. Did like hardly, you're hitting for like 70s. It sucked. With this kit, as you can see, I even have damage on my shield, weapon damage, fizz damage bonus. This one has fizz damage bonus, physical power. With this kit, I'm hitting from somewhere to mid-90s to 100 without like Warsong or anything like that. This is just my raw damage. It feels great. But other than that, really not a ton to talk about. Like I said, there's a lot of different gear pieces you can use here. I'm just showing off some of them. Obviously, like I said, like there are so many different things that you can run. I think there's a lot of different build variety. I will say in trios, I do think crossbow is always the option to run. I don't think you run weapon mastery. I think you run this setup right here. and you run something like one of these builds, right? Like you run this with a crossbow, or like, you know, like a normal, like a more normal build with a crossbow. But other than this, also here's like the last build, I guess, that has like buff duration on it. You see, like this kit has all the way up to 21% buff duration, and whenever if you get like rousing rhythms from a bard, it gives you more. This is just really, really nice because 21% extra duration is literally giving you almost 2 more seconds on taunt, which is reducing the cooldown by 2 seconds. It's great. I love it. And this kit's pretty fast, good HP, good PDR, good MDR. Other than that, I'm trying to think if there's anything left that's worth talking about. I guess I can go over something for new players here. So if you're already an experienced player, you guys can tap out. GG. This is everything for you. But for the new players, obviously starting off is hard. You know, you only have one perk and everything. Oh, actually, I guess I probably mentioned the skin too. I'll do that after if I remember. Starting hard. The one thing I do recommend doing for starting perks, either run Sword Mastery because it gives you more damage, which lets you clear mobs, or run Weapon Mastery because then you can go to your Squire right here. Obviously, I have a lot more things to you because I've completed a quest if you haven't. But you can go to your Squire and you can get access to a bow. You'll have like the gray one, but with Weapon Mastery, it'll give you access to a bow, which gives you range damage, which is really good for PvP, and it's really good for even PvE. If you know there's a mob you're scared to clear, or you know you can't kill it melee, you can use range to kill it that way, and you can pick your arrows back up, and it allows you to do way more. If you are slow in this game, I mean, like, you know, take your time. If you take your time in this game, clearing pretty much any PvE is incredibly easy. You can almost always find some spot the mob can't hit you where you can just shoot it in the head with the bow 40 times to kill it, right? And you can pick all your arrows up and keep going like that. Wraiths, Skelly Champs, all of those, super easy to do. Even Hell mobs get really easy to do whenever you use a bow. Other than this, following this, the perks I would go Sword Mastery, and then you probably, if you're going to run Plate, you would just go Swift Defense Mastery. So something very similar to what you normally would. And then taking Sprint is fine because this helps you run away from people if you need to, run away from mobs or whatever. I would probably go Second Wind as well, because Second Wind is literally just, I think of Second Wind, whenever you're learning the game, think of this as just like a half HP bar heal, right? That is like the best way I can describe this. Like, don't be afraid to use your Second Wind. If you have a campfire, you can get it back. But if not, just use this whenever you need to heal. Don't feel, like, scared to use your Second Wind. Because whenever you start this game out, just expect to die a lot, right? Like, that's the game. And I will say, Fighter is a rough starting class. Fighter's starting kit is not good. Like, this starting gear here, I mean, obviously, because, like, normally you would start with, like, this, right? And, like, without these. Like, this starting gear sucks. It really does. It's not that good. Fighter is a class that's one thing the class menu did get accurate. Fighter is very gear dependent. Until you get that gear, this class feels really, really bad. You have very bad damage. You don't tank anything. You're still pretty slow. There's just nothing but downsides, really. But if you make it through it, and you get to the point where you start getting gear, Fighter gets really, really fun, in my opinion. The best thing about Fighter is how versatile this class is. And I mean in the sense of the way you play fight is never going to be the same. And it's so, so fun. I love this class. I really, really do. But for the skins, Nightmare Axe Skelly, or Nightmare Skelly is always going to be your best bet. If you don't have this, it was a ranked reward for last season, so GG, that sucks. Other than this, you have a couple other options. Elf is good. Lizard Man's good for, like, base game, like, early. Same with, like, Lycan. These are both kind of interchangeable. But then Elf's pretty solid. Frost Skelly isn't bad if you have this for, like, arming sword builds or for damage or for early game, just because it gives you extra damage and you don't really care about minus move speed whenever you're starting off. But other than that, I mean, you can really run whatever. Hell, you can run no skin and it's fine. I ran no skin for a long time just because I didn't want to give up Agi or strength. But if you have it, Nightmare Skelly is pretty much always going to be your best bet. There are some builds where you can run the normal skeleton. If you have way more armor than you do MR, just run the normal skeleton to get more MR. It's fine. But I normally run Nightmare Skelly. And I think that's going to wrap it up for me. If you guys enjoyed the video, feel free to like, subscribe, and all that stuff. And if you have any thoughts or opinions, feel free to comment them down below. For all the new fighter players, welcome to Dark and Darker. Enjoy hell.